The narrative of the modern world is often sold to us as a straight line, a continuous upward trajectory where every step follows the previous one in perfect logical succession. We are taught from a young age that we must choose a path, stick to it, and accumulate progress like bricks in a wall. But what happens when the wall we are building starts to feel like a cage? What happens when the foundation we laid 10 years ago no longer supports the person we have become today? There is a profound, often silent weight that comes with the realization that the path you are on is no longer yours to walk. It is a mixture of grief for the time spent and a paralyzing fear of the void that lies ahead. We call this starting over, but in reality, it is perhaps the most courageous act of self-preservation a human being can undertake. To start again is not to admit defeat. It is to acknowledge that your growth has outpaced your current circumstances. It is an informative realization that life is not a race to a single finish line, but a series of iterative cycles, much like the seasons of the earth or the shifting of tectonic plates. We must first deconstruct the stigma surrounding the reset button. Societally, we view starting over as a sign of failure, a confession that we chose wrongly or that we weren't strong enough to see something through. This perspective is fundamentally flawed because it ignores the biological and psychological reality of human evolution. Every 7 years, nearly every cell in your body has replaced itself. You are quite literally not the same physical entity you were a decade ago. Why then do we expect our ambitions, our careers, and our relationships to remain static? This script aims to educate and inform you on the psychological mechanisms of change, the economic fallacies that keep us stuck, and the narrative beauty of the day one mentality. It is time to stop viewing the ending of a chapter as the ending of the book, and instead see it as a necessary clearing of a workspace for a masterpiece that is yet to be painted. To understand why starting again feels so visceral and painful, we must look at a concept in behavioral economics and psychology known as the sunk cost fallacy. This is the phenomenon where individuals continue an endeavor as a result of previously invested resources, time, money, or effort, even when the current costs outweigh the future benefits. We stay in the wrong career because we spent 5 years getting the degree. We stay in stagnant relationships because we already gave them the best years of our lives. We continue to read a boring book simply because we are halfway through. This is an informative trap that convinces us that abandoning a path is wasting the past. However, the logic is inverted. The time you spent is gone regardless of what you do next. By staying on a path that no longer serves you, you aren't saving your past. You're simply wasting your future. The psychological weight of this fallacy creates a status quo bias, where the fear of loss becomes much more potent than the hope of gain. Beyond the economic perspective, there is the neurological component. Our brains are wired for efficiency, which often means preferring the known miserable over the unknown potential. Neural pathways that have been reinforced for years, the habits of a certain job, the identity of a certain lifestyle, become deep grooves in our psyche. Breaking out of these grooves requires a massive amount of cognitive energy, often triggering the amygdala, the brain's fear center. This is why starting again feels like a threat to our very survival. But here is the educative truth. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself, remains active throughout our entire lives. We are biologically designed to learn new tricks, to pivot, and to adapt. The discomfort you feel when starting over is not a warning sign that you're doing something wrong. It is the feeling of your brain stretching to accommodate a new version of reality. Nature provides us with the most compelling evidence that starting again is a prerequisite for greatness. Consider the phenomenon of serotiny in certain forest ecosystems. There are species of pine trees whose cones are sealed with a thick resin. They can only release their seeds and begin a new generation after the intense heat of a forest fire has melted that resin away. The fire, which appears to be the ultimate destruction, is actually the singular catalyst for rebirth. Without the reset of the flame, the forest would become stagnant, overgrown, and eventually die out. In this narrative, the fire is not the enemy of the tree, it is the midwife of the forest. Similarly, the process of metamorphosis in a caterpillar is not a simple upgrade. Inside the chrysalis, the caterpillar doesn't just grow wings, it completely dissolves into a biological soup before reforming into a butterfly. It must lose its entire identity, its way of walking, its way of eating, its very shape, to achieve its ultimate form. If we look at history, we see that the most influential figures and organizations often found their true purpose only after a total collapse. Consider the story of companies like Nokia, which began as a paper mill, or Nintendo, which started by selling handmade playing cards. They didn't fail at paper or cards. They recognized when the world had changed and had the courage to start again in entirely different industries. In human history, many of our greatest philosophers and artists only found their voice after a period of wandering in the wilderness. This informative perspective suggests that the period of transition, the messy, uncertain middle ground between the old you and the new you, is where the most significant data is collected. You are not starting from scratch, you are starting from experience. Every failed attempt has actually been a high-level training simulation that has prepared you for the next iteration of your life. So, how does one actually navigate the process of starting again without being consumed by the chaos? It begins with a life audit, an informative and objective look at your current state. You must ask yourself, if I were starting today with the knowledge I have now, would I choose this path again? If the answer is no, then you are already living a lie. The next step is the grief phase. We often try to rush into the new thing to avoid the pain of the old thing ending. But starting again requires a mourning of the person you used to be. You must allow yourself to be sad about the what-ifs and the could-have-beens. This emotional honesty is what prevents the baggage of the past from leaking into the new foundation you're trying to build. Without this step, your fresh start is merely a coat of paint on a crumbling wall. Once the emotional clearing is done, we move into the vulnerability phase. Starting again is inherently humbling. You will likely go from being an expert in your old field to being a novice in your new one. You will have to ask stupid questions. You will have to be okay with being bad at something for a while. This is where most people quit. Their ego cannot handle the demotion. But there is an incredible power in beginner's mind. When you are a beginner, your mind is open to possibilities that experts are too blind to see. You bring a unique, cross-disciplinary perspective to your new endeavor. A lawyer who becomes a chef or a teacher who becomes a programmer possesses a hybrid vigor that someone who has only ever done one thing can never replicate. Your starting over is actually a leveling up through diversification. Jeff Bezos famously refers to his company, Amazon, as being in day one. The philosophy is simple. Day two is stasis, followed by irrelevance, followed by excruciating, painful decline, followed by death. Therefore, it is always day one. This mindset is perhaps the most transformative tool for anyone looking to start again. Day one is characterized by curiosity, by an obsession with learning, and by a refusal to be weighed down by how we've always done it. When you embrace the idea that it is always day 1-1, the fear of starting over disappears because you realize that you are always starting over. Every morning is a micro reset. Every new project is a chance to reinvent your methodology. Life becomes a laboratory rather than a courtroom. In conclusion, it's okay to start again is not a consolation prize for the unsuccessful. It is a mantra for the evolved. The bravest people in the world are not those who stay in a burning building because they spent money on the furniture. They are the ones who walk out into the cold night, empty-handed, with the unwavering belief that they can build something better. You are allowed to outgrow your dreams. You are allowed to change your mind. You are allowed to walk away from a life that is fine to search for a life that is alive. The world doesn't need more people who are finishing things they hate. It needs more people who have the courage to be beginners again. So if you're standing at the edge of a great transition, feeling the weight of the years behind you, remember this. The horizon doesn't care how many times you've seen the sun rise. It only cares that you're there to see it again. Your new chapter doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be yours. And today, right now, it is officially day one.